Well, it's an amazing delight to have Sue Atkins on my podcast after about 2 years. We've just been chatting. It feels about five, but I think it was about 2 years ago when you beautifully invited me to come and chat with you on your podcast. So I'm happy to return the favor. And since I was on your podcast, I have also experienced going through a divorce. And I wondered if we could have that as a focus today for our chat, talking about how we can integrate this pause, play, connection into managing the process of a divorce. So, we're going to start where I want to start with all of my amazing guests and just talk about how you loved to play as a child and get to know you a little bit before we dive in any further.
Sure. Play. Well, you just, as you said the word play, I suddenly went straight back to my childhood out in the garden on my own. I'm an only child, and
Wow.
I had little bits of mud pie stuff that I got from, it wasn't dangerous or poisonous, but I made mud pies and I was playing outside. I can see myself playing, in the garden, having a wonderful time. So play was always such an important part of my life. But I remember also playing with my mum and my dad, but mainly my dad actually, having fun and laughter with him. And then my friends were very important to me and my cousins, because obviously I
Nice.
didn't have a brother or a sister. But play is something that I think is just, it's so good for the soul, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really connected, isn't it? And the fact that you were playing with mud in nature and getting
Yes.
outdoors is
Yeah.
beautiful. And how do you play now? Because I'm always encouraging adults to keep incorporating play into their lives. And I love the fact that you didn't just sort of talk about play as an adjective. It's wider than that. It could be playing with words. I know you do a lot of blogging, don't you? And you creative
Yeah.
writing and things like that. What do you do now to play?
Well, that's interesting. I have a sort of a playful attitude to life, I think.
Nice.
I find I deliberately make sure I have time to myself. Like today was one of those. I had my nails done, had
Woo!
my hair. That to me is sort of being playful and looking at sort of me time. But playing for me is also seeing friends. I am such a sociable person. So family and friends are so important to me. And it can be just going for a walk in the park, or it can be having a coffee and a deeper chat. I do like a deep and meaningful as well as a light and fluffy. And
Nice.
we adopted a puppy. So for our sins, we didn't really realize that. I wanted our lovely dog of 13 died, Rosie. And I thought, well, we'll get another Springer Spaniel round about the age of 5, because that's when I adopted her. Because, you're past all the puppy stage. And this lady, we were chatting, and she said, "Oh yes," and then she, "Oh no, I'm sorry, this Springer doesn't like cats. But how about this picture and this little one?" And of course, this was this beautiful little dog that was a puppy, and I didn't remember all of that messing about and playing and all that. So we now have the wonderful Millie, because my son named her Millie because of Millie Bright from the Lionesses and the girl football and the
Awesome.
Euros. So that's very playful. She's made us even more playful because she demands to play. So we
Yeah.
play with her, and then the other dogs play with her too. But I think playfulness is an attitude of mind. And I think we can get so bogged down, and we were just talking before we came on about the world as it is, and it can be a very dark place if you watch the news too much. And therefore, play and being playful, not childish, or
Mm,
it's sort of
mm,
childlike, but having the mentality of play is a release, and it helps
mhm.
you relax, I think.
I totally agree. I think it's a real indicator of where we are in our mental fitness. And or we say mental health. I think Stephen Bartlett
Yes.
says mental fitness now. And it is this kind of
Yes.
nice way of
Yeah.
thinking about. And we can't really feel that playfulness and joy and curiosity when we're in a state of stress. So it is like that alarm system. And I was wondering, leading on to that, this whole pause, play, connect philosophy starts with pausing. And you were
Yes.
talking about the connection, and we could talk about dogs for hours. I'm totally with you on that. My dog was at the dinner table with me and the girls tonight. Such beautiful company, never asks
Yes.
back. And my daughter was saying, "You've got three girls, not two," because she's up with us, and so therapeutic
Yes.
we've got articles about it. We could go on till the cows come home, but going into pausing,
Mm,
it's so important, isn't it?
yeah.
To really notice where we are at in ourselves. And dogs like can pick up on this too. But how do you kind of find that state of playfulness and joy? Because I'm not, I mean, you are a really bubbly character, loads of energy. I've never seen you kind of like morose, but are there times that you have to pause and just
Of course.
recalibrate?
Of course.
How do you do
Yes.
that?
Because I meditate every day. I meditate in the evening
Oh,
or I meditate in the
wonderful.
morning. And even a walk in nature with the dog sometimes is a meditative state. I'm an NLP master and hypnotherapist, actually, trained by Paul
Yes.
McKenna.
Yes.
And so for me, getting into a pause and pause to ponder, I'm always telling that to the parents I work with,
Yeah.
pause to ponder and just slow down and stop, because we live in a very busy world and we can get very caught up in, rushing around and worrying about this and worrying about that, the kids and the homework and the job and all the rest. So for me I get grounded. I mean, of course, I'm full of beans and I'm all in my head and full of energy and enthusiasm, but also I have that reflective, quieter side to me as well, because my father taught me about being in balance. And so I always feel I look for the balance. And I think it's important to get grounded and, pause and then be internal. Think about sometimes what's inside
Mm,
rather than being heavily influenced by what's outside. Often when I'm talking to parents, I imagine there's the roots of a tree or an
mm.
anchor at the bottom of the sea holding you down,
Lovely.
grounding you.
Yeah.
And the world can be all going on up here, or if you've got teenagers, it's all kicking off and they're all a bit difficult. But if you're grounded and centered, then you're in a better place to handle life and handle whatever's going on. So, yeah, it's a balance and it's being mindful of finding what works for you.
Yeah. I love those images that you've brought in, and I think that leads in really well to what we're talking about today. I've got the trees around me. I was thinking about what
Yes.
background should we talk about? Metaphor with children and pictures and in images can work really well when you're trying to explain what's going on to them. And there's been a few times where sort of drama therapy kind of or storytelling, therapeutic stories have really helped through this divorce. And I know being a play therapist, working in a play therapy room, even we would even use sort of these stories just to help or give recommendations of stories for parents to read to their children as part
Mm.
of that process. But when we were trying to explain to our teenagers what was going on, because it was quite amicable, but there'd been quite a lot of mental health issues and trying to work through it for a good many years, and a few things, were going on. But to describe it as my ex called it like a branch that had sort of V'd out, sort of split open. So it's
Yes.
how a branch just goes in two different
Mm.
directions.
I'm going to use that. I love that
It's
analogy.
yeah, and I
Yes.
thought, yeah,
Yeah.
because it's the same system, it comes from the same source. We both had you two amazing children, but mummy and daddy are going these directions now. There's not
Yes.
one higher than the other or sort of more important, is it? It's just that we are parting in that sense. And there was another image of I got them to stand up, and it was like me and my ex next to each other and then the two girls in front of us. I said, what's going on is we're kind of shifting, so now me and your father have moved positions. We're not holding hands anymore, but we can still hold hands as a family unit, but we're now sort of opposite each other and you guys are still right here. And I so these are just little examples of the kinds of things. um, I've got it completely wrong, and I can go on as well about that. But how about you really expanding on this and talking about maybe some case studies and families that you've helped to kind of explain to children or teenagers, and I think it's probably different kinds of things you do and maybe support or pictures and stories that you've heard of that have really just helped to the child to understand what's going on rather than blame themselves or something like that?
Yes. That's the key, isn't it? Because of all the families I've worked with over the years, I always start off with saying, tell the children it's not their fault, because children always think, oh, is it because I jumped in your bed in the night and pulled all the covers off, and is it because I didn't get the right grades, or is it me, what have I done, and so reassuring children. And I like that very much, that idea of, it's not splitting off completely, it's still there, but it's changing. And any analogy that parents pick up on or want to choose to use around the change. We still love you. And I love that analogy where you're sort of around them, but not necessarily in quite the so holding hands so closely, perhaps. But as long as children feel loved and they feel supported, they feel heard. I always think children
Mm.
need to be heard, because as soon as they feel heard, they feel understood. And there was a child in my class called Becky Fagan. She's probably very grown up now, about 30 or 20 or something, 29. And there were about 5 children in the 2 year groups when I was teaching year 4 who were going through a divorce. So I set up some drop in and chat sessions. And she said to me, I don't know what's going on, Mrs. Atkins, but nobody's listening to me. And she was 8. And it
Mm,
took me 20 years later, I wrote the divorce journal for kids. And in my
mm,
head, it was for her. And
mm.
wherever she is and whatever she's doing, I'm sorry I've come too late to the party, but it's for all the children that sometimes don't understand what's happening. And also they can express themselves, they can process it, they can understand, because it's a process, it's not an event. And as I said to someone, this sounds like I'm name dropping now, but I said to Vanessa Feltz after her breakup, it's going to take you 18 months to 2 years. Now, it doesn't take you exactly that, because it's a
Yeah,
process. But she
yeah.
had no idea. She said, but I want to be okay in 6 weeks' time. I want to feel okay and get over it. Well, it's not like a
Mm,
broken arm or you've broken your leg. It takes as long as it takes. And everyone's going through the 7 stages that I've written about. Even your mother-in-law or your grandma, is processing what's happened, because it is the death of dreams. Nobody kind of goes into that with that anticipation
no.
of it, you know. No, and it's great if it can be amicable. I went through a divorce 10 years now, more, and it was a process. It was fairly amicable, but someone's hurt in it, because nobody, otherwise you wouldn't be breaking up and separating. And it takes time, and sometimes you don't heal immediately, and you feel angry and you have all these very strong emotions, or some piece of music comes on and triggers you. The kids are trying to cope with it too. You're all over the place because you're trying to juggle everything, make short term, medium term, and long term decisions. And so it's a difficult time. So you understand that now, having been through it and still going through it. The girls, they don't have to be damaged by it, but it's the level of conflict they experience. So if you put them in the middle of a game they don't understand and you slag off the other person, they look at that and think, well, I look like that. I look like dad, or I'm musical like mum. So where do I fit into this? And they get confused. So it's about reassuring them and making sure that they feel okay and listening to them sometimes. You can't fix it. But one of the key things younger children need to also know, because every child wants their parents to get back together. So you have to be quite clear on that. You don't give them mixed messages about it. But
Mm,
you can parent and co-parent well, and I work with lots of parents where they co-parent really well, or at least also they sometimes work with me for an hour just to tell the children properly. Because I remember having a client, and she said, it was 50 years ago. She remembers when her own parents divorced, and she knew exactly, she was wearing an orange cardigan with navy socks and red shoes or something,
mm,
and she had all the detail, and it had
mm.
happened 50 years before. So we do need to handle it as best we can. We don't always get it right. And when I went through it too, I got bits wrong. But then I started to write all around it as well. And hopefully I've done lots of stuff now to help people through the process.
Yeah, you really have produced so many blogs about it, so many resources and books, and we can put those links in the chat. I was really want to empower parents to play their way and work through it their way. And I really do believe that parents are the experts of their children, aren't they? They really
Oh, of
know
course.
them.
Of
We're here to
course.
come alongside and to
Of
cheer them
course.
on and maybe share
Yeah.
some research
Yeah.
or whatever. But pausing and reflecting and thinking, okay, my child's really sensitive and they would maybe like it in pictorial response, or maybe we take them to this place that they feel safe, or maybe we tell them in the morning or the evening or these kind of things. I've had friends who have mulled over how they're going to do it for so long that by the time they say it, the children have picked up on it. Then
Of
they
course.
really
Yes.
do sense it,
Yeah.
don't they? I mean, one
Yes.
of my daughters said to me, Mum, when are you going to split up? It got to
Yeah.
that
Mm.
point.
Yes.
I mean, they're much more
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're
aware, especially
intuitive, of
teenage.
course.
Yeah,
Of
they,
See, even 7-year-olds are aware if there's
yeah.
tension. It's like, when I remember always, we went to a dinner party, this is donkeys years ago, and we walked in and it was all, hello, everybody, lovely, and can I get you a drink? And you thought, oh my God, they've had a row. They didn't, they were all, it all seemed very nice, but the couple that were hosting, clearly there was such an atmosphere. You pick it up, and kids are just the same. So,
Yeah.
sometimes it is the best thing to do to split up, actually. And the thing not to do, I remember I had a client came to see me and they told their child on a Sunday in their bedroom before they went to school the next day. And then just sort of that was that. Now, don't do it in the bedroom because that's where everyone relaxes and goes to sleep.
Mm,
Do it
mm,
on a Sunday evening before you
mm.
send them off to school the
Good
next day.
point. Yeah.
Have a think about it. And I go into lots of detail with it, specifically where are you going to sit? What are you going to say? Have a few
Mm,
bullet points ready. And then, we did it with another couple fairly recently and then said, oh, we'll have the other daughter picked up by granddad because she's only 3. And then we'll all come together and we'll do what we always do on a Friday night. We'll have fish and chips. And then we'll have the question, we'll have the questions and we'll chat. So it was done really kind of as best anyone could, because you never know how kids are going to react. I mean, young kids sometimes just say something like, who's going to look after the guinea pig?
mhm,
And others will have profound emotions to it and be distraught. So you've
mhm.
got to kind of prepare yourself, therefore you are preparing the children. And it's a difficult time, but eventually, I mean, I've got a new journal out called Suddenly Single, Navigating the Divorce
Okay.
Route,
Mm,
and you can just download that. You don't have to
beautiful.
buy that from Amazon or anything, but that is a journal to start writing stuff out and doing all sorts of things because you're processing it for yourself.
Nice.
And then your kids can do the divorce journal for kids because then they are processing it too, with lots of positives. You can do it together or you can do it on their own. But I think it helps to have a journal because
Mm,
then you sort of write down some of your strong emotions. And if you need to chat about it to someone, you can do that, which helps you heal.
yeah. And when it comes to self-care and walking through it, I know I've had to use pausing regularly throughout the day to do the
Mhm.
meditation or just take that breath or
Yeah.
just check in with my emotions because I'm just
Yes.
very good at sort of pushing them down, soldiering on, push them down,
Yes.
soldiering on. And we do. There's so many. And massive shout out to people who are going through this or thinking about it because it takes a lot of courage. And I think reflecting back, it probably
It
took me a
does.
good couple of years before I made the decision.
Oh,
And
yeah.
um and maybe sadly I waited too long, maybe I didn't, but I'm not going to dwell on that part. It's
No.
like now it's like how how you just walk through it and do the best you can with what you know at the time. Um
Exactly.
and there are some people that I've known who've done it very mindfully and waited till like the summer holidays to tell them or those kind of things. But there are people in crisis, and you were talking about how that woman remembered what she was wearing, the body keeps the score, as Bessel van der Kolk says. Yeah.
Yes, that's so true.
And all
Yes.
these things. So how can we offer some tips and support to parents who have found themselves in crisis? Because it's one of my particular passions to be able to create resources for parents in crisis who do not have the capacity to read a whole book right now,
No,
do not
no,
have the capacity to go on a 12-week preparation for a divorce course. It's
no.
happened, or they've just
Yes.
got displaced because a war's broken out. Now what?
Yes.
Now what? How can
Yeah.
we pause, play, and connect? So, what are your thoughts?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I remember having a conversation with someone who, she was then, that's why I've called the journal the Suddenly Single, because the husband walked down the stairs with suitcase and says, "I'm going," and went and moved into a flat that he'd bought with a new person, and she was suddenly single. It was such a trauma.
Yes,
So
total grief.
what
It
do
is
you
like someone
what
dies, right? It's just a
Oh,
death.
and
Yeah,
it is,
grieving
and it's the
process.
death of,
Yeah.
it's really tough.
Mm,
And so, you know, the thing to do when that happens, and I remember when it happened to me, actually, it was a big shock, actually, nothing quite so dramatic as that, but, you know, long story.
mm,
And I thought, right, what do I do? I thought, okay, I couldn't breathe. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. So I thought, oh, deep breaths, go out in the fresh air for a minute. Right. And I got in the car quite, you know, to see my dear, dear friend who I'd known since, you know, the year dot. She's wise, she's kind, she's known me for a very long time. I thought I just need to unburden myself with her. That was my initial first reaction to
mm.
coping with it, actually. And then, you know, you have to kind of take whatever steps that you think you need to take, and it's the shock that takes your breath away. And then you have to be logical. I remember then thinking, okay, I need to find a lawyer. I've never had to have one of those before, apart from, you know, buying a house. So then I thought, oh, somebody local, and then you look for resources for that. You know, Resolution is a good place because it's got lots of family lawyers to keep yourself out of court. Don't get all belligerent, and you know, because it costs a fortune, and
Mm.
you know, you're just dwindling away all your resources. And then you start to kind of do the process, don't you? And you've got to look around at where you feel you can get your support that's good, wise form of support. You don't necessarily want to get bottles of wine in and go and slag off the ex with all your friends. Now, that's quite nice. There's a place in that sometimes. But you don't want to also do that in front of your children either, because that's what tends to happen. People eat too much, drink too much, don't eat at all, have a new partner immediately, let the, you know, the behavior go of the kids, because it's just a big, you know, the rug has been pulled a lot of the time from under you. So
Mm.
you've got to try and find what works for you in the short term, in the medium term, and then in the long term. But it is about looking after your own well-being first, because from that good place you will make better decisions. I mean, what do you suggest people do?
Yeah, that feeling of helplessness is extremely traumatic and very hard to deal with. And you will go into that freeze response quite a lot. I found so a recent example, a few months ago, I was doing the final parts of the financial order. I I might have A level maths. I might be okay at paperwork, but I put that off, and the ex wasn't even touching it. And you're doing paperwork you've never done before. You're
No, it's so
having to
stressful.
think about, how much in the pension and go to this and
Yeah.
go to that. It's drained it. It's like going through
Yes.
mud. And even though I have all these strategies and I was a trained therapist and I'd set up play healing and it was going on, I had to pause the whole business for over 8 to 10 months. I had to take well, I didn't have to, I chose to
Yes.
take a a teaching job again and
Yeah.
just go back to teaching secondary
Yes.
music full time.
Yes.
Something came up in the same school as the children, so I could be with them. I took them to school, I worked, I took them home.
Yes. Yeah.
I didn't have to worry about where the next contract was coming from.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think financial things are so important to put in place because
Absolutely.
and we cohabited first before he moved out because the financial pressure would have put more strain than the arguments. We stopped the arguments as much as we could. We didn't argue lots, but we knew that if we did it gradually in stages, it would
Yes.
be a teasing out of the process, and not a big hard, break.
Yes. Yeah.
But I would say, um, not to spend, like you say, money. The money I was thinking of, I don't want to spend money on lawyers because that is money that my kids
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
get.
Yes.
And a good friend of mine said it cost them £10,000 to do it, and mine's cost 1,200. Now that's a big difference. With the no
Yeah.
fault divorce that you can do online,
Yes.
600
Yes.
quid, and we
Yeah.
did a financial order for 600 quid, 53 quid to put it into the court, and you're
Yeah.
done. But that's another podcast episode. But like but as far as the playing, I need to constantly be this environment around my kids that can hold their pain, their anger, their shame. They're ashamed that their parents are now split up, one of them
Oh,
especially, than
no.
together in that family unit looking all great. Teenagers maybe are going through those kinds of things, and they will say things to you that can feel really harsh. And if you take it personally or you start crying and go to pieces, um, then it's not going to really make them feel very safe, because they need to feel safe through this as much as possible, safe and held and seen, as you were saying. So I feel like, it's like today I've had a yesterday was full of very strong emotions. My kids are 16 and 18. They're doing their mocks and they're in GCSE and A levels right
Mm,
now.
yeah.
They've just, mum and dad have divorced. There's a lot of emotion going on. So things are tough for them at times. And so they will have extreme emotions. And yesterday was one of those days where they had some drama at school and they had this, that, and the other. And today, even though I had a really full day, I cancelled a couple of appointments and I went swimming in my safe space. And I still go into that swimming pool because it's my s-
Yeah.
my time out where I can recalibrate. And I've gone through the rest of the day feeling very proud of myself because I looked after myself this morning, and it's
Yes.
doing those things or going for a walk. If I feel like I'm gonna lose it, I go into the car and have a little scream or a sing along or a shout.
Yeah. Yeah.
Try
Yeah.
to, because I need to let those emotions out.
Yes, you do in a safe place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't just hold it in, hold it in, hold it in, because that's
No,
when you
because
break, right?
that's like shaking. Well, it depends who I'm talking to. Shaking, if I'm talking to kids, it's like shaking Coca-Cola. Where's it going to go? When you take the lid off, it's going to explode. Or champagne, where's it going to go? You take the cork out. Wow, out it goes.
Yeah.
So it's got to be released in a safe place. And you're right. It's difficult. It's challenging. It's 3 steps forward, 5 steps back, and that's why taking time out for oneself is crucial. It's like the oxygen mask. You got to look after yourself first, whether it's scented candles and, going to the cinema or having a glass of wine or running out in the fields or whatever you do to get yourself grounded and feeling better so that then you can take care of the kids, because otherwise everyone's running on empty. And it is a highly stressful time. So self-care is not selfish.
No, and the connection piece with connected with safe people. I'm really lucky
Yes.
because my folks are quite nearby.
Yes.
They've been an incredible support through this, good friends to talk to, other friends who've been through it, safe males as well as females, it all comes as part of this connective package to just hold you through this time
And as
of
I said to you
brokenness.
again, but it is really, but it's a process, and
Yeah,
it takes. You can hear that it's still quite raw for you.
yeah,
It's a process, not an event, and it takes as long as it takes. And some people get over it very quickly if that's their choice and they want to, or they've healed from it. Other people take a very long time. And I was talking to a friend of mine actually, and she still hasn't made peace with it because it was her son's birthday recently. He's 30. We went
mhm,
to the party. His dad was over there and she was over there. She won't go anywhere near him. And he doesn't, and I keep saying, oh, for goodness sake, it's been 30 years. Can you not make peace with this for the sake of everyone? But for some reason, she just can't. So, it is a journey. It's not for me to judge, but, we are a blueprint for love, and how we handle it and how we talk about it as we go through the process is important. So self-care is vital.
yeah, yeah, it really, really is, and it doesn't have to be candles, like you say. It could be a dancing to
Anything that
Taylor Swift in the
yeah,
Shake It
it's what
Off, Shake
yeah,
It Off.
whatever. I love it. Why not? Whatever it is for you, and find it though, and just do it regularly, because that will give you the energy to carry on through it.
Yeah, yeah. And you do the kind of coaching, the NLP, all emotions are valid. It's good to maybe remind listeners about that. And I think I did a little a while ago. It's just pausing to connect with those emotions, acknowledge it, you know, thank the universe, thank God for that. It's okay, it will pass. Those kind of practices it's just this flow, because if I'm not in flow and I get all stuck,
Mm.
that's when things crack, that's when things break, that's when you lose it, that's when you say those things that you regret. Um, so I would definitely encourage that. Is there anything we're talking about school systems? I had the privilege of working as a play therapist with children who'd, experienced separation in the family, and I would have two dolls' house. I was told to have two dolls' houses and not just one, so that they could
Yes.
play out the fact that they were going to one person's
Yes.
house and then
Yeah.
the other
Yeah.
person's house.
Yeah.
There were times when children found things like puppets really helpful, and
Yes.
all those role play. Some, some children experience real trauma, like seeing, one experienced seeing the police arrest the daddy and take him off, and then
Yeah.
every time they saw a police car,
Yes.
they were
True.
triggered.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they had to come to play therapy, and we worked through that, and
Yeah.
they they I don't think sitting kids down and talking at them is always the right way to do it. That's my
No, no,
my
no,
my
don't
opinion.
talk at them.
Play is
Often,
their
yeah,
language. Let's do it in a
yeah,
play-fueled way rather than
yes,
sitting them down. Mummy and Daddy are having a divorce. How does that make you
no,
feel? They don't have the
yeah,
language, especially younger
no.
ones.
No, of course not, and they don't understand. I remember a story where a couple came to see me to prepare what to say to their daughter, who was 3. So we sat down, we did the hour together, and we worked it out what the messages were, where we're going to do it, where she was going to sit, what they were almost down to what they were going to wear, and what would happen afterwards, etc., etc. So they did it, and then we had the next coaching call the next week. And I said, "How did it go?" And she said, "Oh my goodness, we didn't expect this." She said, "We did all of that. It was going very well. And then suddenly our little girl, her bottom lip went, because she said, 'But who's going to take care of me?' She thought they were both going, despite the fact that they had explained it in their way. So how you explain it to a 3-year-old, of course, is very difficult and different to how you explain it to a 13-year-old. But you're right, you don't talk at kids, and that's why it's important to try and get that moment. At least one of the most important moments is the telling of it, because parents dread it. And if
Mm,
you're in an emotional state as well, that's why I often suggest you have a piece of paper and a few bullet points. If you can do it together, fine.
mm,
If you really can't, it's too difficult, because you will crack, you'll start to
mm.
cry. So you kind of, or you don't have to, but you probably find it very difficult. And that will keep you sort of looking at your bullet points of the
Yeah.
key messages that you want to sort of get through. And then there's just holding the space. And of course, it's not a one-off conversation. It's like it's like the birds and the bees, or social media, or online safety. You don't have the one conversation, do you?
Oh my
It's
gosh, no, and
it's
especially not with one
constant.
of mine. Well, it's funny, I told one about the birds and the bees, and then for the next week, I had an hour of questioning every night. Then the other one I told, they were like, "All right, that was
Yeah,
it."
yeah, I know already.
Yeah, going going off topic again. But like, yeah, I'm excited for parents to maybe not feel the pressure to make it too formal. When I was
Yes,
working in social care, when I was having to tell an 8-year-old that he wasn't going to go home tonight, he was going to stay with a foster carer because, it was going to continue. What I used to do is pause, play, connect. So I'd pause, we'd play. That time we made a den together and we played and we
yes,
connected, because obviously he didn't know me that well. So I
yes,
used
yes,
play to build connection,
beautiful.
create this
Yes,
sort of sense of trust. And
yes,
then
safe.
while he was in his safe little den, I
Yeah,
said,
yeah,
mummy's not feeling well at the moment, and da da da. And I said it in a very simple way. And
yeah,
when he was more relaxed and receptive, instead of sitting him
yes,
down on a chair, well, I'm
yeah.
here to tell you, you know?
Yeah. No, no. I mean, what you did there, absolutely beautiful, absolutely amazing, isn't it? So, yes, there's never an easy way to do it, but if you're going to do it, look at the thought that went into it, which was beautiful. And, it is a difficult, all these things are quite difficult to have, but you can't run away from them. But it's how you give a little bit of planning to it that you can come through it.
I love talking to you. I could talk to you for another 3 hours, you know. I really could. I've enjoyed chatting. I don't know whether people will take what they will take out of it, but hopefully they'll get that spirit of there's no judgment here. we're all going
No.
through this event in many different ways with our own experiences. And
Yeah.
um, I love the fact that you come from a massive background in education, and everyone, I implore you to go and check out Sue's website. I'm going to put all the links on there. She's so experienced. She's on the TV. She's worked with Disney. You've worked with all sorts of people, haven't you, over the years? But you did have 22 years in education,
Oh,
and
yes.
I've just hit 22 years. So there you go. We've got something
You
else.
don't look old enough.
Oh, I am. Oh, I am. So it's what would you change? Let's just talk education a little bit.
Mm.
If you could change one thing right now about the education system, I'll give you two if you need to.
Oh, God.
What
Apart
what
from money.
oh, well, yeah, but
Oh,
what should they
oh,
do with the money? Because sometimes they throw money and
oh.
they use it in all sorts of places where
Well,
we think, "Hello." So,
well,
so
yes.
tell me what you do, Sue.
Well, I'll get political, won't I now? Because you've got children in rack, where they're worried about the ceiling going to collapse on them. You've got no resources in the art cupboard. When I used to go and get paints, I used to remember, oh, loads of paint. There's nothing there. Teachers are on their knees because they haven't had a pay increase, respectively, for about 14 years. Schools are not valued. Children, there was a panorama documentary the other week where children are cold. I mean, not just a bit cold, they are freezing cold with gloves and coats on because the school is in such disarray and disrepair. So that breaks my heart. And in fact, I actually cried watching Panorama because as a former teacher and deputy head for all those years, I loved teaching and I loved children and I loved my job. I never went to, oh my God, it's a wet Wednesday in November, how awful. I just loved doing it. And then my life changed again and I went into a different direction. And now I love what I do here, trying to support parents and things. But for schools and education, there's so much mental health now. Children have
Mm,
lived through a pandemic. Some young children didn't socialize at 2 and they have speech delay and they're shy, or teenagers were isolated. They didn't see friends. They were addicted to gaming. It sounds, I don't usually like to be negative, but there is an awful lot of problems. And I was on LBC this week talking about social media and stuff. And I said to the guy, I don't think we're going to fully understand the impact of what the children have all gone through for about 20 years, because it's going to be a collective trauma. Now, not everyone will have been traumatized by all the things, but there is this sense of real uncertainty. So if I was going to say anything for education, train up then, and poor old teachers have to do everything, or pay for people like yourself to go in and do play therapy, or people like myself go in and do some positive kind of workshops for kids and help them manage their well-being and their mental health, because investing in children's mental health and well-being will be a long-term solution to society. So, school is not just about doing fractions and learning the times table. It is such an enormous, array of things, right from the beginning of nursery right the way through to when you leave school, and take some of the pressure off these kids around these exam results, because that is not who you are.
mm.
You can all, I mean, I did some A levels and I got my 3 A levels, but I had to do one of them again and I was so devastated. Um, but my dad said, well, you just do it again, so I did it 6 months later and I passed. So it is just one, but we get so fixated about, oh, it's got to be
Mm.
now and I've got to get it right now. And there's too much pressure on kids. And, social media and all of that stuff is fantastic, but also it can damage your well-being if you're on it so long. And we need to allow children to play, to connect, to heal from some of the things that they have been through. Does that answer that question? I got a bit passionate.
I'm so glad you got passionate. I think you're totally right when we need to let them play. I had a year
Yes.
1, 2
Yes.
class for about 2 years. It was really hard because the government want the year 2s to do their sort of SATs at year 2,
I know.
and the
Yeah.
year 1s were coming in from reception where they'd been learning
Mm.
through play constantly, and I'd been a
Yes.
reception teacher, so I knew exactly where they were coming from.
Me
And
too.
it's like, how do you keep that play-based learning going when you're wanting to sit them behind desks so much and you're wanting them to learn 100 words, how to spell these 100 words? And then it's science and geography and all these topics you've got to fit in the afternoons, and you only have
I know.
space for like half an hour of art a week. Yeah, like again, we could probably talk for 3 hours about
Yeah,
this.
because
Uh,
actually Michael Gove has to come into that a bit with all this formal learning, and they don't understand that children
Look at
go
the
from nursery where
research.
they're playing.
Yeah,
We know anybody in education knows that play, and as Einstein said, it's the highest form of learning, and it's children's work. And yes, you come from reception where you're learning and playing, going to year one, it gets a bit more formal, and then suddenly you're making them kind of all sit there and do things. Of course, it's helpful to learn to spell. I'm not being silly, and it's nice to know, your times table. Don't be silly. I'm an educationalist, but I do think we've got to find more balance.
mm, and ways of learning that are fun, right?
Yeah, well,
And
yes,
and
fun.
and that the teachers enjoy. I never
Well,
want
I'm
to go, I can imagine you as a teacher, I really can. And I remember going into teaching saying, I never want to be a teacher that either has lost their passion about the subject or
yeah.
lost their passion for young people,
Oh,
because the
that's their
kids
sense
will
of
pick it up.
humour.
Yeah.
To
Yeah,
take them outside, I just go, come on outside, and I'd make up games around numbers and
brilliant.
fractions and whatever we're doing, and we'd be outside, and people would be kind of looking, what's she doing? They were laughing, they were learning, they were
Yeah.
remembering, and I love that play-based learning, and it was absolutely in the body because they'd have to run over there and run over there and then do that and then go back there and all the rest of it. So, of course you did some stuff where you had to sit down and do that too, balancing everything, but bring on some fun and laughter and joy. And then you've got a lifelong love of learning.
I love that. Yeah, and they just have to look at Lego Foundation's research recently. I mean,
Yes.
we don't need any more research about it. We all know play is good for us. We just got to do it, right? And allow ourselves. It's just permission to play
Yeah.
your way. Um, so final message. How are we going to sum this up, Sue? How I mean, the floor is yours. Take as much time as you want. We've definitely gone over 20 minutes, and that's fine. Um, and I want to keep it all. It's fab. But like, yeah, tell me what's on your heart for parents, especially going through separation and divorce, whether it's amicable or maybe more of a crisis situation. What would you want to say to them?
It feels like a storm, and I remember waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning many times and opening my eyes and go, "Oh, no, it's not a nightmare. Oh, it's my real life," because I was so devastated by it, and I found it so challenging. And people say, "Oh, you come through it. You come through it. It takes time." Eventually, you just do. You come through the eye of the storm, and you come out of it stronger, wiser, hopefully not cynical, and life is messy, it's never straight, it's never the way you think it's going to be, but come through it, find the support that you need for yourself and for your children, and be forgiving of yourself, because be kind to yourself.
Gentle. Yeah.
Be gentle. I love that word, actually. Be gentle. And then you will find you will come through it. You just walk alongside somebody too. Don't rescue them. Just walk along. Don't rush, and don't go too far out into the future sometimes. And get the help if you want support. Find somebody to talk with that can guide you a little bit or offer you that support that keeps you kind of focused, not just your friend who loves you and will just say anything to make sure you feel good. And don't join the pity party with bottles of wine slagging people off, but do find something that nurtures your spirit and your soul as you go through it, and you will come through it, and you will look back, and you will take all the good memories and the laughter from that time as you then go forward, making new memories, making new traditions, and forging your new path.
Beautiful. So, so true. So yeah, we're cheering you guys on, whoever's listening. Keep going. And we are both testament to say that you do get through it. And I know that my journey will continue till the day I die. I think the healing process, we're never fully healed. We always have things that come up or something else that goes on. But just thank you so much for sharing some of your experiences and your expertise on the subject. And have a wonderful rest of the year supporting families. Thank you.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I just the time has flown and I've really enjoyed talking with you. So thank you. And thank you for the work that you do as well.
Thank you.